much.
Hey, we're going to talk about that.
And I'm going to hand the mic over, but before I do so, can we welcome our wonderful panel on future wearables? Hi everyone, my name's Gemma. I'm going to be moderating this panel. I was going to start by introducing everyone, but it seems like we've already done that, so I think we should just probably kick off and start talking about some wearables. So we were all asked to come and chat to you guys about wearables, and we were chatting before about how to even begin talking about such a broad topic. Everything from an Apple Watch in your hand through to implanted biotech in your body. It's an extremely broad topic that covers lots of different issues. So we're going to touch on a few different things today, and then we're going to get straight to you guys for some questions. But I'm going to kick off and let's start talking about some data, because that's always a big thing that comes up when we talk about wearables. And for me, I think one of the big questions I always have is, how do we strike the balance between just gathering a whole load of data about ourselves or about our behaviour and actually using that data properly, analysing it to give us some really good actionable insights? So maybe Maria, would you like to kick off and tell us about it?
Does this work? No? Better? No? Okay, so from my experience of building a wearable tech company, I came up with two conclusions. One is that men and women are different in the terms of what kind of data they want to get from wearable tech products. Women are very much focused on aesthetics and getting data that are important for them, while men are very tech savvy. Men will always, buy fitness trackers that will give you all sorts of data. But at the end of the day, how much of this data are we using? Another thing is that a lot of people, when they're building wearable tech products, a lot of people are focusing on data, but they're not focusing on that key component, like key aesthetical component, which is very, I think, important for women. So when you compare wearable tech products for men, you realize that they're predominantly built from men and by men. And then when you compare wearable tech products for women, you'll see such a big difference. So I think there are two key issues. One is data that we get from wearable tech products that are built for men and for women. Another thing is how they look like. Are they really pretty? Are they, visually appealing to women and men? So I think those are the two key problems.
Is this on?
No.
Okay, so I also think it's an interesting point to raise is we're harnessing all this data, but I think we need to focus more on making it meaningful in real time. So one of the things that we discussed before as well was there are a couple of examples of people that are doing it. There's a smart baby monitor device, which is a little bit like a Fitbit for your newborn child, and one of the things that it does quite well, which is not necessarily so at the end of the day it'll give you your baby's analytics and how many hours he or she is sleeping and stuff like that, but it will actually tell you in real time. You can look into your app, a smartphone app, that will tell you your baby's sleeping right now, and based on the different patterns, he's about to wake up in 53 minutes, which is incredible for a parent. If you're in the next, also it'll gauge whether the noise in the room is too loud if you're hosting like a social event at home, and everything is done in real time. So you're actually harnessing the data and giving real insight into the how the parents can do something about that right now. And I work for Racefully, so it's part-time, and it's a smartphone fitness app. And one of the things that we're trying to do as well is not have a fitness app that will just tell you analytics at the end of the day, but really help harness and change your behavior and be, say, kind of a personal coach in real time, because that's how we can see something that's a real added value to people's lives.
Hi. That's interesting that you're saying that, because I think, does this work?
I'm not sure. Can you hear Lisa? Yeah.
Yeah. At Vinaya, so I work at Vinaya, and we create designer wearables that, the one that I'm wearing around my neck right now, but which is a notification filtering device essentially. But behind the scenes, we've been working on a whole lot of other things, including this summer we launched a campaign for a biometric sensing wearable, which isn't on the market yet at all. And in November, we're launching another, it's kind of the second generation of this product, which is essentially, it does everything that a Fitbit does, but it looks great. It's a bracelet. But one of the things that we've found with data is that we don't actually, we're trying to crack this challenge. We talk about this all the time, like how do we actually provide the user with meaningful insights and actionable data that goes beyond step tracking and activity tracking, especially because we're creating products for women, and women have a more holistic understanding of well-being beyond just how many calories you're burning or how many steps you're taking. And yeah, I would argue that we haven't solved it yet, and we're far off from being able to solve that, and for many reasons, hardware being one of them. I think we're still a few years away from the kind of sensors being developed in order to capture that real meaningful data. But one thing that we talk about a lot is creating data and algorithms that kind of help you over time understand your patterns in your behavior. So actually, for example, you don't need a wearable, or you don't need your smartphone to tell you that you're stressed. People know that they're stressed in the moment. But over time, imagine if you could see, how that correlates in the patterns, the micro patterns in how your day-to-day activities and your habits and things that you may not have realized you do every day affect your stress levels or your sleep patterns, things like that.
I think you've all raised that really interesting idea around behaviour change, and I don't know how many people saw that this week there was a study.
Dramatic pause.
There was a study published around Fitbit actually, and they basically found that if you got people to use a Fitbit and also paid them money, after right at the start, they found that behaviour did change. They did lose weight, they did do more exercise, but after 6 months, 90% of the participants stopped using the device, and obviously the weight went back on, because we all know that if you do a crash diet, you lose all the weight, but the minute you stop doing it, it all goes on back really, really quickly. So versus not using a wearable at all and wanting to just change your behaviour, it's not as effective. So how do we harness this amazing power that we now have with sensor, data gathering, analytics, and actually try and change behaviour for the better?
So I think that one of the key things is to look at how early on we are in the whole wearables market. So people talk about last year being quite a big year for wearables. Fitbit IPO'd. A lot of wearable companies don't end up IPOing. They actually end up being acquired. So Map My Run actually got acquired, and I think that to contextualize how things will change going forward, we have to realize that wearables have to go from niche to mainstream, and in order to do that, more needs to be done with big companies and the smaller companies. So people sometimes complain about, the Apple Watch isn't, it's not revolutionary enough, but actually the Apple Watch actually makes wearable technology open to more people and more accessible. And I think last week, Snap Inc. Announced their new hardware sunglasses, and people are like, why are they doing that? But actually, in order for wearables to scale, they need to go mainstream. So it depends on who funded that research. It might have been Jordan or
There's a bit of controversy.
but
Always.
I think that people should realise that Fitbit getting to an IPO is actually a sign of the industry getting that. And Intel just bought a Dublin-based chip maker, and their chips are in a lot of AR and VR devices, and so that is still early on, and the hardware needs to move forward. And investing in hardware is really hard. So
Yeah, I think just to add to that, I think it's a little bit of a double-edged sword too, because it's, the industry perhaps isn't quite there yet, but there's also the stigma from the consumer. So, in terms of hype and adoption, and wearables kind of have a bad rap at the moment in the public eye, because they haven't yet been able to prove that they can, that it's something meaningful to add to people's lives. You have like, yes, Fitbit, before this study was aware that they have about a 60% drop-off rate after 6 weeks with the customers, so ends up in someone's top drawer, collecting dust. And of course we had Google Glass, and at first with the Apple Watch, everyone was quite, I don't know, there's a lot of convincing there to do, I think, too, in the public as to what value wearables can bring to them. Yeah.
I can add to what Lisa's saying. So my company is a wearable mobile phone. It's this one here actually on my wrist. There's a tracker as well, but targeted to children, so between the ages of 5 and 10. And I do face that problem now because it is a mobile phone that everyone knows of and a GPS tracker. But because I put it into a wearable, and then I've shifted the target market to an age group where parents don't usually think about a wearable for their children. It's all of a sudden become this brand new product that a lot of people, not only they're not aware of it, but it's really shocking to them. And so I have to really start from the early stages to kind of educate them as to why this is something that could be the preferred option to giving, a 7-year-old an iPhone, for example. They do face these challenges.
Yeah, and on that note, it's interesting to see how we can look at different cases that can use wearables in a way that we've been using them already. So say there's like smart earrings that will do exactly the same as what a Fitbit does. And your pulse and your steps and your calories and your patterns, but it's something that we already have, and to blend that into something that's aesthetically pleasing and quite desirable, I guess, for the end consumer, which Apple does quite well, could be something that maybe takes it to the next level. So it's interesting to see how we can integrate that into ourselves and our bodies a little bit more. Maybe we can move on to that.
So the company that Intel just acquired, which is a Dublin-based company, is called Movidius, and their hardware is in like lots of drone technology, but their hardware allows you to not have to keep charging your devices all the time, because with all of these devices, you have to charge them. And so when you have better battery power within a smart device, it will allow us to do more things because it actually lasts longer, and we're not consciously worried about, oh right, if I am going out on my, so I started using wearable devices when I was training for the London Marathon, and during the marathon my iPhone died, and I was like, God help me. And so
no, there's a case now that I came across recently, which actually translates your steps into energy.
Right, well
So
maybe I should have got that. But now if I was doing a marathon, I would use my Apple Watch, and it should hopefully get me through the marathon in time. But it's taken, like, this company that Intel acquired actually started in 2005, and it got acquired in September. Yeah.
To add to the point that Colleen and all of you guys are really making, I think that what's most interesting about wearables is this idea that it can create this more invisible technology towards this future, more screenless, ubiquitous computing. If you look at just like the societal adoption of technology within a generation, the smartphone has gone from something, that nobody knew about to something that we can't live without, and we're all screen obsessed and things like that. And it's interesting that you're saying, okay, because you put it on a wrist, it all of a sudden has a different,
It's a brand new product.
Product, and it comes with all these new taboos and things like that. Whereas really, it's just a more seamless, more invisible way and less disruptive.
Exactly.
Just to add something, I think that when we are building wearable tech products, you have to be very conscious what kind of problem you're solving. Because my opinion is that a lot of wearable tech products are the best possible, problem for a solution. So yes, so when we were building, for example, my own company, Keisha, it's a smart umbrella company, and it's a brolly, it's an umbrella, and we were very conscious when we were building this product because we actually wanted to solve a problem that a lot of people have, which is losing their umbrella. So it's an umbrella that you cannot lose because it has a beacon that's flat around the umbrella, and you have the app and you connect it to your smartphone. You'll get notified every time you leave your umbrella somewhere, so you won't lose it again. So we haven't invented something that never existed before. Beacons existed before, umbrellas existed before, apps existed before. We just blended everything in one product. So I think that when we're building wearable tech products, people should, designers and founders should think about what kind of problem I'm trying to solve. How simple can that solution be? Let's not overcomplicate things. Just keep it simple, plain, and visually attracting, and that's it.
I think just hearing what all you guys are saying around, it seems like in some ways we have a sort of cultural kind of barrier a little bit when it comes to wearables. People are kind of thinking, what is this new stuff, and what about my data? And I wear hearing aids, for instance, and how long have hearing aids been around? I mean, they're like the original wearable, let's be honest. I mean, you think about it, women are already cyborgs. Anyone who has the implant is a cyborg, and how long has that been going for? So it's weird that we've got this kind of weird perception in some ways of scary, things that we're doing to change ourselves or whatnot, when actually, when you take paracetamol, that changes yourself. So, I'm curious to hear what you guys think about this idea of we've got tracking, but we've also got control, and how does that change?
And it's interesting because our smartphones are an extension of ourselves anyways. How often do you put it down in a day, using it all the time? If you were suddenly without your smartphone for an hour, if the battery dies, you feel like something's missing, you feel empty, you feel anxious. So it's an interesting thing that people are, I guess, in terms of data especially, I think that there's a lack of education when it comes to understanding what the implications of data are, because it affects every single one of us, and we're leaving a trove of data everywhere we go. Yet there's when you speak about it, people are just, it's an endless topic. I think a different panel.
Yeah, I think we're talking about this. Yeah, exactly. It's a generation thing, but I think also there's a sort of branding element. Especially when you think about health, for instance, we spoke a little bit about running devices and whatnot. A lot of the wearables are about preventative health as opposed to reactive health. So make yourself healthy so you don't get sick, as opposed to curing you when you get sick. So I'm wondering, do you think that it's maybe because we're not kind of talking about it in terms of solving really big problems, or why do you think it is?
I think that it can be sometimes due to pop culture, right? So if you look at the movies that we might watch, etc., the idea of wearable technology is so out there, but it's what movie directors have said can happen. And so until we're able to change once again how the mainstream looks at wearable culture, and to make sure that we indoctrinate that it's a good thing and it can be helpful. And I think that's key, like your Snapchat comment.
As well as privacy and societal issues, it's also a bit of a personal philosophical issue of how do you, and we don't know the answers yet, but how do you define yourself as a cyborg, or approach someone who's would that change on a psychological level? And also there's a distinction between something that's on your outer layers, on the outside, and on the inside. So say there's that tattoo that came out that they developed at MIT, which is like a trackpad, and it's a temporary tattoo, which you just use like a normal tattoo. But really, you can then there are various uses, 3 different uses for it. But is that I've had mixed reactions from people saying, oh, I don't know, I think, oh no, it's a little bit of a, it's an intrusive thing, it's a privacy thing, it's I don't know how many of you would have a chip implanted within, I guess, and it also depends on, yeah, so how many of you would get a chip implanted if, okay, yeah, and it's also to do with who's putting the chip, what is, if say Microsoft or Apple are coming out, or Google, one of those, are coming out and saying, we will, we've developed this product. It's a question of trust. If it's a small startup that could have revolutionary technology, but they're saying we'll implant a chip, we're like, okay, what for? What are you doing with that? Like, who are you? Yeah.
Could I ask a follow-up question? I'm wondering how many people in the room would wear clothes like smart fabrics or jewelry with.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's interesting because that could gather just as much data about you, but it seems like it's not actually about privacy. It seems it's more about changing your body, I think. Let's actually start opening up to questions in the audience because I feel like you guys have lots of different points that you want to make, and we can see what you guys have. We have one here. Here we go.
About your comment regarding the fact about privacy, it's not about privacy. I think it's more about the fact that you could take it off if you wanted to, whereas actually having something that's actually implanted into you that you could never, well, you could get rid of it, but it's a physical thing you would have to consciously do. Whereas just taking your earrings off at the end of the day or deciding that you want to wear it for a particular day is more important.
Is that what, I mean, that's why I don't have the implant, for instance. I don't like the idea of it being in my skin.
That's true.
Yeah. Any other questions from the audience?
I guess it's like a permanent tattoo versus a temporary tattoo.
Make sure you have the right picture.
Make sure you want it's a commitment for life. So, like marriage.
Well, so speaking about...
You didn't think that was going to come out of the panel.
Okay, well, speaking about hacking, then you're a cyber hacker. Why don't we? Can we hack? Could you be hacked?
So I mean, I was in a cybersecurity startup. So one of the things that we were seeing was in the cyber trend, it was quite scary going into kind of big system, like big industry grid system hacking, but also an area that it was great, like big alerts was that hacking was hacking hospitals. So ransomware, you were able to get all the hospital's data and hold it ransom, and like literally, and say if you don't pay us X amount of money, we'll delete the data permanently. So the hospital wouldn't know what it was suffering. And these things are happening right now. And to go a layer further than that, we then had people's pacemakers being hacked. So say someone, so that's next level kidnapping, and to, in a really serious and horrible way. And that's a real concern when you think about putting something, implanting you with some kind of smart device that effectively turns you into a walking computer. And you are then, there's a real kind of awareness and education problem there in people in society understanding that it's not only when you think about cyber hacking, for example, and you immediately think of a computer, that's not necessarily, especially nowadays, especially with things like Amazon Echo coming out and different forms, very integrated forms of IoT tech, you actually need to be able to, you need to be aware that you can hack your fridge and you can hack your microwave. And it's just that you're opening yourself to a whole new, like millions of ports that you suddenly have open as opposed to just your phone or your computer. And that's a real question if you think about a person getting hacked. Let's just leave it hanging there.
But I was going to say, to add the sort of the other side of the story and the lighter element of it, I mean, the talk that was on earlier on about will we have our periods in future years, and we were talking about these advancements in health. I mean, when you think about, I've totally spaced the name of the company, but they've created a pill that you can swallow and it's connected and whatnot, and so that it releases medicine as and when you need it, so you have it. And that's incredible. That's personalized medicine actually happening, worthwhile. And yet we talk a lot about these massive concerns, and how do we balance that sort of the growth versus the worry? I think in this space is one of the big issues. Adisa, what do you think? Because you're obviously looking at this more from a sort of investment and
so
moving forward.
I think once again it's about how do you make something go from niche to mainstream, and one of the big things is education. and educated in the right way, so that I can't remember her name. She's from Thornton. I can't remember. She runs a healthcare startup in San Francisco, and basically it's blown up.
Elizabeth.
Right.
Theranos.
There we go.
Theranos.
Right. So that is an example of a healthcare startup blowing up in everybody's face, and everyone saying, "Oh my!" But the spin that's happened with that is it's had such a bad effect on the healthcare companies that are working with medical professionals, that are working in the lab and are making sure that their tests are secure and advanced. And so how do you make sure that you partner with mainstream and work with mainstream, and you don't get sucked up only into your tech bubble and say, all right, I've got the best technology, nothing else matters. Well, actually, if you are creating a medical device, you actually need to talk to the people that have been doing this for 30 years or whatever, and that change in conversation in the media as well needs to happen more in order for the public to be reassured that this is okay, and it not just to stay with enthusiasts who use their Saturdays to do things like this.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Lisa?
Sure. I think a big part of it is also success stories and use cases. So for example, wearables in the workplace is kind of a big discussion at the moment, right? Like employees buying everyone a Fitbit or a different wearable. It's quite, we could argue about that. Basically, like how is that data going to be leveraged? Is it really useful? I would like to see a success story or use case where, a workplace really used it to their advantage and everyone ended up super happy. And I think and less stressed, but I don't think we're there yet.
Do you have any audience questions about anything to do with what we've been speaking about? Yeah.
Hi, one of the light bulb moments was about trust. You mentioned earlier about trust. For anyone on the panel, are you considering how you're building your trust with your consumers? Is it an active campaign? What are you doing to actually address trust and make sure that people actually want to buy your product?
Well, my consumers are primarily mothers and fathers as well, so that is definitely one of my major challenges. How does the parent trust that the data, for example, the tracking data is not being used in a way so, strangers can find out where their child is. So in terms of like what Gemma was saying about collecting data, we actually went the opposite. We don't collect any data at all. And we actually try to go as simple as possible in terms of any kind of features of the wearable itself. So I think that in itself gains trust from the parent, knowing that only the parent basically has this information, only the parent and whoever the parent inputs into the app, only these people can call the child. So I think that in itself, is a way of building that trust from my product. And there's a lot of new parent tech is also growing as well. So I think in discussion with a lot of different people in this space as well, that's actually key. Rather than introducing a lot of features and a lot of other things where you can get a lot of information, it's actually going the other way.
I also think it's really important to listen to your customers, constantly listen to their feedback and improve the product and innovate the product. Because, for example, when we launched Keisha, our main assumption was that it's going to be for tech-savvy people, young millennials, everyone's going to buy it. But after a year and a half, we realized that 75% of our customers are men, businessmen between 40 and 55. So it was a completely wrong assumption. We were so surprised that we couldn't believe. So always listen to your customers and try to get as much feedback from them as possible and build the next generation of your products or next version of your product in that way, because at the end of the day, customers are the key to your business.
I'm really curious about what you were just saying, like the why. Hi, I'm really curious about your question. I'm kind of curious regarding the why, because your target audience changed.
Yes.
How did the why change? Did it change in why they're buying it as opposed to your assumption?
Yeah, I think the main reason was, first of all, that what we discovered, main reason when people are buying our umbrella is that it's wind-proof. So it's not tech component at all. And we were so surprised by that.
It's not.
Second,
It's not what.
tech component. So it's not that tech part where you get better forecast or you get notifications if you're really in a public place. It comes second. First is that it's windproof. Yes. Next reason, the second reason is I would say also that it's a bit pricey for young people. I mean, price range is between 56 and 90 pounds. So let's face it, not many young people, just started with their jobs or at university, they won't buy such a, expensive umbrella. And then again comes this tech part. But I would say, yeah, that were the two main reasons why we decided that we'll focus on, I would say, business people and people with higher purchasing power.
You had another tip.
Yeah. So on the trust aspect, what we're building at Racely is definitely a very engaged conversation with the customers, so that we're giving them the choice, and I think that's really important. We're saying it's a smartphone app where we gather all the normal analytics that you would with a normal app, but we're saying you have also one of the co-founders is an IP lawyer based and specialized in privacy. So it was very important for us to say to our customers, you know exactly where your data is going, and you have the choice to stop the data, but you'll have limited functionality when you do, but that's up to you. So I think it's important to give them the choice, and other than that, just keep, as the ladies in the panel said, keep educating them and iterating the products. So find out at what level, what they're comfortable with, and go from there.
Any other questions from anyone? Yeah, awesome.
I think this may have to be the last one.
Cool. Time flies when
Make
you're
it
talking
no
wearables.
pressure.
During your product life cycle, when does security and privacy enter that? Is it your first thought when you think I'm going to create a wearable? Is it an afterthought?
That's a very good question.
Do
you want to go into it? Yeah.
So my context comes from working with founders and entrepreneurs here in London for the last 6 years, and so it really depends on the founders and the team. They should think about security, trust, regulation, etc. from the beginning, because if they don't, they're going to hit it at some point. But I think that it's important to make sure you have that in mind. So the fact that her company has an IP lawyer in the company helps build trust, and also helps think about the elements of security and regulation in your product. I think that there is this misconception that technology entrepreneurs across all fields just don't care about that sort of stuff. But when you take investment from other people, when it's not just your money, people are kind of like, hey, you do not want the regulator and come down on you and shut you down. So you should, if you want your company to last for more than 5 years and for decades, you need to make sure you think about trust, regulation, security, because especially in mature markets like the US and the UK and across Europe, privacy and security and trust are the things that are causing huge issues for big technology companies. So if you are running a wearable company and you don't think about where your data is stored, you don't think about how secure is the information that you have, you're going to hit a wall somewhere, and someone will lawyer up and say, hey, what have you done with my data? So yeah.
Oh. Oh, left, right. Go to Lisa.
I can definitely comment on that. Being part of Vinaya, a startup, it's early days and going through the last year and a half of growth, and through figuring out what product are we going to build next. And as we were just saying before, it might not necessarily be the goal to IPO or whatever the goal is. It really is. Our main goal is to just help shape that future of where wearables and technology is going, and create something more humane. And data is a massive part of that, and that's one of the very first conversations we're having in terms of what are we going to build next. Part of it, really in its DNA, is to make people more aware of also what is the data that they're sharing, and how can we, throughout the product and throughout the user experience, kind of try and do that differently. So I think it's definitely important, and I think that hopefully most startups that are trying to carve out this space are having that in their kind of cultural DNA.
Did you say we're all out of time, or do we have time for one more?
I'm afraid we are out of time.
Ah,
Sorry.
wearables. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Big round of applause for